For those who have been wronged and betrayed, of which there are many people out there that have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. We will take care of it. We will take care of it.
President Trump promised retribution, and we're here for all of it. President Trump certainly deserves the ability to right the ship in this country, and a lot is deserved for the worst swamp monsters of the deep state. They tormented the Trump administration. They tried to disqualify him with indictments. They went through Melania's underwear drawer. From our standpoint, it really all began with what they did to President Trump's first pick for National Security Advisor in his first term, General Michael Flynn. You see, Flynn, a former Democrat, had worked for Obama. He had a real plan to clean up the rot in the intelligence community. General Flynn was pursuing peace with Russia in order to clean up all of Obama's mess. And as a result, they tried to make it seem like this great patriot who had bravely served America was somehow compromised. We thought we'd bring General Flynn back on to discuss where we are in this critical moment. Joining us now is former National Security Advisor to President Trump and the author of Pardon of Innocence, an inspiring story of faith and freedom, General Michael Flynn. So, General Flynn, it seems like every day we get a different piece of the puzzle regarding the Russia hoax, but you were really the first piece. You were the first person that they smeared with this abject lie, as you continue to see the evidence about the FBI paying people to spy on George Papadopoulos, Clapper creating this phony intelligence community assessment, Obama demanding it. What are you looking at the most to say this is the smoking gun that the American people need to digest?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple of things, Matt, and thanks for having me on. Thanks to your great audience, too, and all that you do for this country. There are a couple of key meetings, and we learned of these, one from the Durham report, another from my case, which we fought tooth and nail to get dismissed, and we did. And then the third, which is really the biggest one, the biggest sort of bombshell of the Russiagate, is another meeting that was held in the Oval Office with Barack Obama. So all three of these meetings, and the dates are 3 August 2016, 8 December 2016, after the election of President Trump, and then the third one is the 5th of January of 2017. Every one of those meetings was held in the Oval Office. Barack Obama led them. The most important one that came out from what Tulsi Gabbard has exposed is this 8 December meeting, and in it, they basically decided then that the fact that Donald Trump had won, they were then going to go after him, as hard as they could. And this is all before that meeting, the 8 December 2016. I had just only been the National Security Advisor designee for about 3 or 4 days, right after Obama told Trump, don't hire this guy. And you're right to say some of the things that I had planned on doing, because I did it at the Defense Intelligence Agency, was reform and audit, right? Look at budgets, look at the reform of the organizations. At DIA, I did it in an organization that has, 20 to 25,000 people. Now I was looking at it as a National Security Advisor to not only, affect certain agencies, principally the CIA, but also the entirety of the national security state. And that scared the hell out of him, because I was very public about that. I was public about that during the campaign with Donald Trump, and also once he designated me as the National Security Advisor. So fast forwarding to today, Matt, is I think this raid on John Bolton, which I know, people are like, wow. Well, let me tell you something. In the digging around that Tulsi Gabbard has done, and this is what I believe what we're seeing here, as they've dug around and they've determined this, the commitment of treason, which is what a word that Tulsi used and a word that Trump used, a coup is the other word that Barack Obama affected. I think that digging around in all this, they've discovered things about John Bolton. And for the people that are on your audience here, John Bolton was not only the National Security Advisor who came after me, but he was also the U.S. ambassador to the United Nations. And he's a huge, huge war hawk, a guy that, is on the polar opposite of where I stand when it comes to trying to get us out of wars. He wants to get us into wars. And I think that what we're going to learn is that from the investigation of Barack Obama and his thugs, that John Bolton's name popped up. And there may be some really nefarious things here. So it may be where he might have been sharing intelligence and providing information, classified information, to the adversaries of Donald J. Trump. And I'm not talking about China and Russia for now, but certainly the domestic attacks and the domestic assault that Donald Trump was going through. But I also think that there's going to be some other foreign information that we're going to discover here. So John Bolton is in really, really hot water. Very, very serious that he was raided this morning, and I'm certainly appropriate, unlike the raids that you mentioned at the top, where they went into Mar-a-Lago and they went into Roger Stone. So, I mean, all the raids that we now know were all based on a lie. This particular administration, the Trump administration, with the Pam Bondi as the head of the DOJ and Kash Patel as head of FBI, they are going after legitimate targets. They are going after and digging. This is why I think everybody in the country has been, we want accountability, we want accountability. And what they've been saying is, be patient, things are going to happen. And I think that this particular raid this morning is going to unravel a much greater network of people that were anti-Trump and in many cases anti-American. And so everything that happened in Russiagate, which to me, Matt, and I'll get off my high horse here in a second, everything that happened in Russiagate is now proven out that it was based on a complete fabricated lie. But I think the bigger story is going to be the 2020 election, which I know Tulsi is involved in pulling together she's pulled together a team of people. She's really digging into the 2020 election. And I think that when that report comes out, it's going to be mind-blowing, because the attempted coup, Matt, was Russiagate. And Trump was able to fight through it, as hard as that was in his first administration. The actual coup was the 2020 election, the stolen, rigged election.
Well,
and I think when that
the coups never stopped. I mean, this guy had to
Exactly.
survive 2 assassination attempts, and it just seems like sort of a rolling coup attempt that has a variety of different appendages that we have to deal with. But you make a really important point frequently about how the heads of these organizations have to approach the large body politic that exists within them, the constituency members of these. And just so my audience understands it, like, what percentage of the overall intelligence community from all these different entities do you think just have abject hatred for President Trump?
Well, it's easy to tell, okay? And how you tell is, because there's a lot of them that are outside of Washington, D.C., but inside of Washington, D.C. and the counties that surround Washington, D.C., all you got to look at is the voting record. And if you really want to dig into which parties these people are part of. So we're looking at 96% of the federal government has voted for president, has voted for the Democrat ticket in the last 4 presidential elections. 96%. So right then and
Vladimir
there,
Putin doesn't even get those numbers. Those are numbers that would make Kim Jong-un blush. But you talk about the partisanship, but I think you also made a really important point earlier that this coup has involved Republicans and Democrats. You yourself, a former Democrat who just didn't like what you were seeing from the corruption and the incompetence standpoint. And so maybe speak to the bipartisan flavor of some of the worst features of the deep state.
Yeah, so people know I was appointed by Barack Obama twice. The first time was as the Assistant Director of National Intelligence. I worked directly for Jim Clapper. The second time was the Director of Defense Intelligence Agency, and I worked directly for, in this case, Jim Clapper and others in the Pentagon, but for Barack Obama. Obama appointed me twice. That's huge, and I was fully Senate confirmed twice. I was a Democrat, and they do look at your party that you are part of when you get to that level. And I was the type of guy that I didn't really care about politics. In fact, I've always said I never voted for president of the United States because I looked at the president, whoever it was my commander in chief. But I was a Democrat who joined the Trump train, right? Because I saw what I saw inside of the U.S. intelligence community and in the national security military industrial complex. And what I liked about Trump was that Trump had the same sense of the direction that America needed to take and what the rest of the establishment was doing to destroy our country, frankly, to undermine it. So, I got on that train in August. The first time I met Trump was August of 2015. So I stayed with Trump for a long time. I've stuck with him because this man, as you said, rightly so, he's survived 2 assassination attempts, one of which did hit him in the head. So this is the guy that's historic. He believes in this country. He loves this country as I do. And I'm not in a place now, and I've walked away from the Democrat Party. I was never really political, but there is no Democrat Party anymore. They are completely destroyed. And when the 2020 report comes out, I think the American people are going to be so upset, because you're right. The coup has continued, but they were able to secure a moment in time with the 2020 election, and they almost did it again. Thank God Donald Trump decided to run for president again, and thank God he survived 2 assassination attempts. And now he's
and thank God some states got their act together. I mean,
Exactly.
Georgia basically had a ballot custody system that had like less control than a school lunch hall over where the stuff was, and now they were shamed into better conduct. I think there was a little more focus in Arizona. So some things got better, but I think you're right to draw our attention to it. I do want to talk about your book for a moment, because in addition to being a very informative roadmap on where to look for the worst stuff, you also highlight some tactics that the government used against your family. And I don't think they're rare. I just think this is how the corrupt deep state operated. What do you think, when people get your book, give us an anecdote that you think will really draw people's attention to the cruelty that was applied to people in Trump world?
Yeah. So one of the things that they went after was my entire family, and my immediate family. Of course, I have a couple of sons, a couple of grandkids. And we all know that this was a lie. It was a lie then, but you run out of resources. So they will pound you into the ground. They will cause you to I sold my home. I gave up everything that my wife and I had ever, saved. And I'm looking at a real big problem here. And then I was like, I'm not going to do this. And then they said, well, then we're going to go after your son.
Jeez.
And that's when I was like, oh my God. So at the time, I was the national security advisor. I served almost 34 years in the military, 5 years in direct combat operations, the head of one of the largest intel agencies in the world. I never, they couldn't find an unpaid parking ticket, Matt, on me, but they were going to take me to a court system in Washington, D.C. that they totally controlled. And they were dangling 25 years.
Oh, General,
in jail.
They could have convicted you for abducting the Lindbergh baby, killing Jimmy Hoffa, and being the second shooter on the grassy knoll, all in one trial in the D.C. courts.
Yeah. And so, you think a guy who's a general, in the Army and all this other stuff, this happens to everyday people every day. And it cannot happen any longer, Matt. And that's why I'm glad to see the team that Trump has in there and the kinds of things that they're doing. And one of the big ones that people need to watch is, I think, watch Tulsi Gabbard as the director of national intelligence. She is going to reform. And I will say here that I do, and I stay in touch with her on a very close basis because why am I on the outside instead of on the inside? Trust me, folks, in your audience, I can be far more effective on the outside, because I can be in a very, discreet advisory position to help guide people and say, look there. And that's what I do.
Hey,
and
on the outside,
and I know it's helpful.
That's where you got your hands on all the weapons. General Michael Flynn, thank you for continuing to fight for this country and for this administration that's doing so much to defend her.
Yeah. God bless. Thanks, Matt.